Welcome to Backstage with Richard Ridge. SAG-AFTRA Foundation and BroadwayWorld continue their filmed conversation Q&A series here at the Robin Williams Center. This special event is performing live in broadcast musicals, and we've assembled an incredible array of talent who have participated in all the broadcast musicals on NBC and Fox. They are The Sound of Music Live, Peter Pan Live, The Wiz Live, Grease Live, and Hairspray Live. Enjoy. Well, thank you all for being here. This is the scope of all of the live TV musicals that have appeared on Fox and NBC. I thank you so much for being here tonight with us. My first question is for all of you. For an audience member watching these live musical events, it's been thrilling. But for each of you, is doing a live musical on TV thrilling or terrifying or both?
Both. I would say definitely both. Which
I
would
agree.
you say?
Both.
Totally, both.
Both.
Yes.
Both.
I think terrifying.
I have to say both.
Maybe terrifying is more capital letters. Terrifying.
Tell me why.
I think in the beginning, I can speak from my experience just a couple of days ago. We had like 4 days of run-throughs on the lot and just doing the show as is. And I made a couple of mistakes, didn't feel like it was in the pocket. I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And Sean Hayes looked at me and he says, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm good. So the day of the show, somehow it all left me, and voila, that feeling that when you know it's in the pocket and you can go out there and not think about it. So those terrifying moments for those run-throughs and everything. But then the day of, when Kenny Leon, our director, said, you have one shot. Don't leave anything on the floor, okay? Great, no pressure, right? So I was glad to be able to say it's terrifying in both and be able to get through it and be really pleased with the performance.
See, now, when we did it, in South Pacific, Sound of Music was the first one.
Yeah.
We only had one run-through before we did it live.
Wow.
So, that face.
I'll never forget the nerve-wracking feeling that morning. You could drive onto the lot, and we did this in Long Island at Grumman's at a soundstage. And you drive onto the lot, and there's so many more trucks, and there's so many more things. And I said to the driver, I said, "What is that?" He goes, "Oh, that's the generator, the spare generator, in case the power goes down." And it was this enormous thing that could run, I think, a city. And you start thinking about, not even thinking about all of those things. Yeah.
I mean,
the idea of the technology breaking.
The thing that was awesome, I thought, was when we were spacing, because we spent a lot of time spacing and only, like I said, one time actually running it. But every time that we did any scene ever, they would always say, and going live in 5, 4, 3, and then you knew. You just got used to hearing that. So when it actually happened, then you were thinking, oh, it's there's no different. We've done this. Okay, that's fine. But yeah.
I think too, so many, the Broadway performers that were in a lot of these musicals, we're all used to live, and we're all used to making the one count, whether it's the opening night when your family's there, or the time when the New York Times is there, or whatever it is. We're used to that pressure of the focus on the one. I think that it was different because we had a real mix of actors in our cast. We had a lot of people from Broadway, but we had a lot of people from television as well who didn't do the live theater thing as much, and so it was slightly different energy around. But the weirdest thing is knowing that it's that night, and it's exactly like it was in the studio the night before and the night before, because we didn't have audiences, and we had no audiences.
That's another thing too. It's funny. I think for the actors going forward that will be participating in these musicals, I would say, believe in yourself and believe in your ability to execute at your highest level. Because what happens is that you're not going to be going over numbers every day. Like we did Welcome to the 60s on Tuesday. Come Friday, we haven't touched it since Tuesday. So now you have to remember all those notes, all that blocking. And for me, over prepare. Some folk are just like, I got it. No, I'm over preparing. So I'm writing notes. I'm remembering where we have to go. And it was really interesting and fabulous because with Welcome to the 60s, which is a huge, fabulous musical, not because I'm one of the Dynamites and we're featured in that, not at all. But more importantly, the message of Welcome to the 60s and how Jerry, we did it like we did on Broadway because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, okay? And he changed the camera angles because the cameras were going this way. Our backs were toward the audience, so he was saying, okay, for that particular place, you guys are going to face the cameras. And then you turn. So we had to make adjustments on set in that moment. While the cameras, that's a whole other choreography. I mean, we had a couple of bump-ins, and I'm glad we had those 4 run-throughs, honey, because that would have been a hot mess, okay?
Every one of
but
them.
It was, I mean, it's interesting. That, to me, is the ography.
Shanice, for you, I mean, you were discovered, and then you were thrown into this whole thing as the star, as Dorothy. So terrifying, thrilling.
But listen, there's no rehearsal like rehearsing for a live musical, though. Yeah. Like, it's not, when you're doing a show, like, every night, you can go back and fix things and make it better. This is your one shot. So the rehearsal process is crazy. And when that night came, I was just like, yeah, I've had this beaten into me. Yeah. Like, it's going to be good. And I was ready. They made sure I was ready. So it's that type of process.
You have to think, too, you don't, just because of financial issues, you can't add the cameras and the cameramen and all of that stuff at the beginning. So we rehearsed Sound of Music and Peter Pan, and I'm sure you guys did the same, in studios in the city, like we were putting on a show that was going to go to stage. And then we went to the sound, and that's when we added the cameras, and that's when we added the technical part of it. So it's basically almost like starting over in a way. And because you can't have those guys with you all the time. Yeah. So that's why it feels so last minute, even though you think, well, why don't you just rehearse longer? Well, it doesn't matter. Financially, you can only rehearse so much,
That's the truth.
with what it costs.
Noah, for you.
I mean, oh my God, I sound louder. I would say that, something weird happened where I was expecting to be absolutely terrified the day of. I was thinking like, oh man, everyone I've ever met or will ever meet will be watching this at the same time. I better not mess up. And then something weird where, and I wasn't expecting this, the day of the show, it finally dawned on me that, I can't see the audience. Like, I can't see the people watching this at home. I don't know who they are. I'll probably never know who they are. And they can see me, but I can't see them. So it suddenly, the idea of the audience, which was, millions and millions of people and, sort of ostensibly like the scariest size of an audience possible, it suddenly became totally something that's distant and theoretical, and I didn't really have to worry about it. It was just the camera and that guy who I always see every day, and then that other person I see every day, and then it suddenly became really calm and really smooth, and then we finished it, and it was only then that I was like, oh yeah, 12 million people just watched that. That's crazy, but I don't know. I don't know who they are. So.
I concur. I think that was the one thing I never really thought about. Yeah, I thought about all of the people that are going to be watching, but more importantly, the people who were not able to afford to go to live theater. A lot of people can't afford to go to Broadway. So for me, coming from the hood in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and the projects, and Lafayette Gardens, I went back, and I always go back to where I came from. But when I told some of the kids that I was going to be on TV, they couldn't believe it. Now, I've done a couple of shows. I'm a former Rockette at Radio City. None of that matters, honey. So it's very interesting that for people who are not able financially to enjoy the fabulosity of this great city of theater, which some of us take for granted, some of us are very grateful about. I just felt so happy that if they tuned in and got caught up in whatever they got caught up in, magic was going to be in their lives forever. I get chills right now thinking about it. And for me, that was of uber importance. That's really important. We got to be able to pass the arts on to those who are not able to really manifest it. So thank you, Hairspray.
Besides rehearsing, how else did you each prepare for the actual live performance? I mean, it's quite an undertaking. Staying healthy. Were you obsessed with, like, don't come near me, you have Purell all over your body? I mean, what did you do?
Okay, Allison Williams played Peter Pan, Peter in Life. She sent me a huge box of everything to stay healthy. And I was just like so grateful for that. And I used everything. And I think that was the first like winter season that I didn't get sick. Like, I'm forever grateful to her for that. All those products, it was just magic.
Well, timing-wise, it is tricky. It's when it changes, when the weather's changing, you're in a big, cold sound stage. And we did the parade, and so 5 in the morning you're in front of Macy's, and it's cold there too.
It's cold.
So it's just, we were like tempting fate, really, but somehow we all survived it, or they all survived it.
How did you each all down here? Like, were you obsessed with like, don't come near me, or I have to stay healthy?
Yeah, the 2 days before the show, I started to come down with something, and I was doing the run through, and I was like off in a corner, like spiraling in my mind. I was like, I'm gonna be sick, and I can't do the show, and then I'll get fired, and then the whole show, this $30 million thing, will go up, belly up, because I got sick. It's all my fault.
You were in your head, big time.
Yeah.
Woo.
So, and then it turned out to be fine, and then the day after the show, my body just completely shut down. It was like, we made it this far, and that's as far as you get. It was also might have had to do with the fact that I had, I drank a little. I drank a little too much the day before, but I don't think it was that. I think it was just my body got sick.
Okay.
I didn't really worry about it because we had Carrie Underwood's chef who was making like amazing organic vegan meals. So we were eating like the food because they feed you constantly out there because you're out in this airplane hangar, you know, and it was extraordinary. So I just, going and getting as much tea as you wanted and eating really yummy food, I felt like, well, we're good. We're good to go.
And the Hairspray girls.
I had a little regimen. I worked out in the morning before going to set. So I joined the gym on set at Universal, and I would work out, and then I would go to set. I ate really good, a lot of protein and vegetables, no carbs. And when I did have a little bit, it was fabulous. But I pretty much got sleep when I could. I'm a mom, and my husband, they were all back in New York, so I was in California, which was any working moms in here? Okay, so like when you're away from the family, it's like you love them and everything, but you relish in this, like you could lay on the couch and just do whatever or just roll over. It's fantastic. So I was enjoying that time. Mentally, I was in a great place. My mother always told me attitude determines altitude, and I was like, I'm about to do the best show ever. So it's on. If not now, when was my idea. So here we are.
I love it. For Rob Ashford, you had the opportunity of stage directing and choreographing 2 live TV musicals, The Sound of Music and Peter Pan. What were some of the major challenges for you with each, and how they changed between The Sound of Music and Peter Pan?
Well, one thing that was very clear when we talked about doing The Sound of Music live was it was very clear to me and to all of us, and something we tried to make clear to the world or anyone watching, was that we weren't doing a remake of the Julie Andrews film, that we were doing the musical version of The Sound of Music, a stage production that we were going to broadcast live. And that part of it was very important. And because, what did Judine say? If it's not broke, don't fix it. Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the Julie Andrews Sound of Music. It's different, the film, than the musical itself. So it was very clear that we wanted to do the musical and keep those songs in and take the songs out that were added and keep the order that was in the original Broadway, and not to do the order of songs and places of the Julie Andrews film. But one thing that was very exciting was that we tried very hard to keep the theatricality in the production, even though it was being filmed as it felt like a movie. So, like the moment when Carrie decides she can't stay and she needs to go back to the Abbey, the wall that flies out and she gets to... There's a moment right into the Abbey. There were moments like that. We tried to find... a handful of those that constantly reminded the viewers that this is the musical of The Sound of Music, and it isn't a remake of the Julie Andrews film. one of the challenges was actually, you know, we recorded our orchestra, pre-recorded. So the orchestra was a live orchestra that played, but was pre-recorded. And so we had no place. We wanted a live orchestra. We actually tried very hard at first to imagine how we would do it, but on the sound stages, it felt like it would defeat the purpose of having a live band, because it would have to be so mic'd to reach all the different rooms in this big airplane hangar. Would make no sense. And so we did record the music, and that happened fairly early in rehearsal. Well, what happens is, well, what you record is what you have, tempo-wise. And so once we started getting in there and we started getting on and getting comfortable and moving, we wanted faster tempos on almost everything. But there was nothing we could do.
Interesting.
You know, that was done. So we did that much later when we did Peter Pan. We recorded at the last minute that was possible and still feasible, so that we could change the tempos as people started learning it, and it started growing and forming. So those were things we learned.
Yeah.
We learned we needed a little less time rehearsal in the studio and more time out there, more time with the cameras and more time in the space, for sure.
Yeah, you could. I was saying before that it was so fun for me to watch Peter Pan after going through the experience that we went through for Sound of Music, and being really conscious because of what they were doing and how it was shot and how that was different of what they had learned and what they had integrated into the next generation of it.
So
and
much.
I just was like, look, they've obviously had more than one run. This is awesome, you know. And but it was really exciting and so gratifying because they're trying to figure out how to shoot what we had done in the studio versus then once it's there, whether all the things we had planned were going to be able to be shot. And with Peter Pan, it looked like, no, we're going to go into the movement, and all of the camera shots were thought out ahead of time. At least it seemed that way, and that was so exciting to watch, because I think this whole thing, it's been a birth of what is this new animal, because is it theater? No. Is it film? No. Is it TV? No. I mean, it's something else. I remember having a conversation with Laura Benanti, because we were both like, well, it's not film. It's kind of here, but it's heightened because it's theater. So what is it? You know, and trying to sort of negotiate that, it was interesting.
Interesting hybrid. Yes.
Okay, well, that goes into my next question. Honing your performances, because you say it's not theater, it's not film. And theater, you put it all out here to the mezzanine and the balcony. And in film, you bring it down. But this is this hybrid. So from a director's standpoint, how did you hone performances? And for all of you, how did you hone in your performance?
Well, it was very important. You could see immediately that one thing that you needed to get underneath you as an actor was you had to have your on-stage welly, as they say in London, which is like your support underneath you. You had to realize you were doing a musical. You were singing out. You were speaking. You had to understand that. You had to like at least support yourself that way. You just didn't need to reach the back wall. That's all. You still needed to have a certain amount of the energy, because you can't just go into the song without it. You can't sing these songs, especially something like Sound of Music, Peter Pan, both written a long time ago, so there's not the finesse of newer musicals. Not that there's no finesse in Sound of Music. It was of a time. Yeah. So when the intro starts and then you start singing, if you've been naturalistic acting up until that moment, and then you suddenly have to, it could be quite jarring. So listen, we were blessed because we had great stage actors who could also understand that, just great actors. You know, we had Audra and Christiane and Laura and, Christian Borle. And we had these people that know how to do that and know how to play both worlds, how to do both worlds, It didn't take much adjustment for anybody to understand what was needed at the time. So
I was just always happy to not get a note. It's like you go and you do it, and it's like, okay, they're not telling me anything. That's probably a good thing. Okay, good thing.
Oh, sorry, you go.
When we were working on Hairspray, Kenny Leon was the director, and it was really interesting to have him shepherd us through this, because some of the amazing talent that was on set was new to this. So he was aware of that and shepherded all of us in a way that was honoring where we were in the room. And I think that's really important because as you move forward, you want to feel that the experience was great and that people are not trying to put you in, if you're a square, into a circle. You come to the gig, you got the gig, so let's work with what we have. So it was really amazing to see the actors transform. And he would say, put a little less mayonnaise on that. Or, you know, it would be great. And in my line in the record shop, when Martin Short comes in and he says, party, anybody for chicken and waffles? And I said, if we get any more white people in here, it'll be a suburb. Well, instead of just diving into it like I dove into it originally, I took the moment as the moment. We know how fabulous Martin Short is and that comedic timing. Okay, so when he said it, I gave it some air, I gave it some breath, I let it go. Kristen Chenoweth is right in front of me. She gives me a look, and I say the line, and I feel like $1 million without being told. Now, that's a little something for me, but it also says to me, my instinct of things is good, and I don't need for someone to say, oh, this is great, or this is not. Although we do need shepherding because you don't want to be all of this and it's too much. You look like, you're gagging and all of that. You don't want that. You don't want that. But that was really nice.
And the other thing I was going to say is that I unlike everyone on this stage, I have a different musical theater background in the sense that I don't have a musical theater background. So I was coming from the world of plays, like serious off-Broadway plays, which is very different from Grease. So the director, Tommy Kail, who's amazing, and luckily I was friends with him going into it, so there was sort of a level of like shorthand, and he felt comfortable really kind of like telling me when I was really wrong. And he has a very sort of cutting sense of humor, which is good. In this case, because I came in and I was like doing some weird like off-Broadway version of Eugene from Grease for the first few, and just because I didn't know how to, like, I didn't speak the musical theater language, and specifically Grease, which is its own kind of language, and he was like, no, what are you doing? And I was just like, I don't know, I think, is it this? And he's like, no. And so over the course of a few rehearsals, he sort of got me to understand, like, you're not a real person. You're like Eugene from Grease. You're like, you gotta do Eugene. And he's like also, the other thing I know a lot about more than musicals is movies. So he would be very good at like explaining it in like movie terms. So he'd be like, no, you know how in Tron the characters walk like this? And I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, Eugene's like that. So just be more like a Tron character. And I was like, I got it. It wouldn't have worked if he'd been like, if he'd explained it in some other term. So yeah, I was like really wrong for the first week or so. I was doing some weird thing, and then I had to learn how to speak the language of Greece, which was a great challenge and a great like learning opportunity. Yeah.
Shanice, for you, working with Kenny, honing your performance?
I used to think about how I was going to bring the two together at the beginning. But even in the audition process, Kenny was always on me about being real. Like, no acting allowed. Just be real the whole time. Being on stage, sometimes it's kind of hard to do that. You have to portray what you're saying to the whole room while trying to still be real. But the cameras are right here. Every emotion, everything just flowed naturally. I didn't have to do anything extra. It was really fun. And then I just let the emotions take me into every song. Yeah. I mean, it didn't feel like a show to me. Everything just had to be real. That's how I did it, I guess.
I love that. We have so many actors in this house tonight, and I just thought, what is the best bit? This is my final question. What is the best bit of professional advice that you've been given that you each live by?
Mine is attitude determines altitude. So when you go in with a great attitude, it's amazing the heights that you will climb as a result. You may not know everything, but if you have an open spirit, a fabulous heart, and you're willing to work, great things happen.
Beautiful.
I think I think Dustin Hoffman said this, so it's not my advice. It's someone who's a little bit better at acting than me who gave this advice. No, that was sarcasm. He's much better. He said that like there was a baseball team at one point that started to hire a psychologist for the batters, and this point in history where no one understood why this baseball team was hiring a psychologist, and the psychologist was there to tell the people who go up to bat, you have control over everything that you're doing up until you step up to the plate, and then you have control over everything that happens, including your swing. But you don't have control over whether you hit the ball. So you're in control of everything that you're doing except whether you hit the ball. And then you're in control with everything that you do after that. You're in control of your reactions to whether you hit the ball or not, and you're in control of the next swing and the swing after that, but you're not in control of that moment of the hit or the miss. And he was basically comparing that to acting, and he was like, you know, you're there to audition. You're there to swing. You're not in it to hit the ball. You're just in it to swing. So keep swinging, and that's all you can do. So I think that's the best advice that I've heard, and it's now my advice because I stole it from him.
Perfect.
I saw a video of Bryan Cranston that has gone around, and it really did change my life, I have to say, because he was asked that very thing, and he said that your job, know what your job is, and your job is not to get the job. Your job is to go into a room, whatever room that is, and it is to interpret a role and present it with as much stuff that I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but to present that role as cleanly and as concisely and as truly that you can, and then you go home. That is your job, and you do that every time, no matter whether you're in rehearsal or whether you're auditioning or not. It is not to get the job, because that's not your job. And to worry about things like that is really kind of ridiculous. So as soon as you sort of relinquish that notion, there is power in that. And that you can just sort of go in, and that's something my husband and I, every time we have an audition, we're like, okay, go do your job. And it's not about booking it. It's just about going and do the work. Always do the work. And if you go in and do the work, then whether they need you or not, okay, fine. But it definitely takes a lot of pressure out of your brain because you're not so desperate to book it. It's like, okay, did I do my job today? Maybe, or yes, I did. So yeah, that.
Love that.
I would say when you come into an audition room, bring yourself. People, it's the craziest thing to see that people would rather put on something like this character that they think we want to see, and they don't really know, that they've known for, 2 weeks, if you've had 2 weeks to know that you're auditioning, usually 2 days, maybe 2 hours, rather than the person that you are, that you've lived with your whole life. And so that is the tricky bit. So sometimes you come in, it's just people that are themselves. I'm sure that's what Kenny saw in you. People that are themselves. And you just have to give us, it's a short amount of time. So you have to give us yourself and maybe turn the dial up just a hair. I'm not saying be over the top or over, but sometimes people feel like, oh no, they want someone very serious, or I'm going to be really cool, or I'm going to be very perky, and I'm going to be very perfect. And sometimes people they don't even hear you. You ask them a question, you want to find out something about them, and it's just like, no, I'm doing my 16 bars, I'm coming in, I'm doing my thing, I'm reading the thing, I've done it a million times, and you speed through it because you've done it in your head so many times that you have no sense of tempo anymore, and you just speed through it, and you can't act when you're speed through. You just can't. And you want, oh gosh, try it again. This time try to give an adjustment, not because you're not doing it well, but because I'm trying to make you think it's something other than just seeing those words on the page and going down faster. And then it ruins, I think all the work you do and all the hard work that you do in reading the play and taking the voice lessons and going to the gym and getting there. All the things you do to come in, my gosh, bring you into that room, not this half version of yourself that's speeding through.
I believe in speaking those things that are not as if they are. So if you believe in yourself and if you put in the work, because faith without works is dead, if you put in the work, then I'm going to say when you make it. My best piece of advice from Kenny Leon is stay humble and remember that it's all about the work.
That's beautiful. I want to thank you all for flying in from all around the United States and bringing such an insightful panel tonight. Let's hear it